As the United Federation of Planets grew and expanded, they made great strides towards exploring the Alpha and Beta Quadrants, eventually making an alliance with the mighty Klingon Empire to become one of the dominant powers in the region. When a wormhole to the Gamma Quadrant was discovered late into the 24th century, the Federation learned even more about the galaxy, though it also led to a devastating war with a local superpower known as the Dominion. And while this made the Gamma Quadrant the primary focus of the Federation throughout these years, there was another important mission of exploration taking place at the same time, led primarily by a single ship on the far side of the galaxy. Having been transported to the Delta Quadrant by a powerful alien called the Caretaker, Captain Janeway and the starship Voyager were left to make the long journey back to Earth, roughly 70,000 light-years away. Yet Janeway and the crew did not despair, instead taking advantage of this rare opportunity to explore this mysterious quadrant, learning as much as possible in the hopes of making a meaningful contribution to the Federation upon their return. By taking advantage of wormholes and new technologies, Voyager was able to make it back home in only 7 years, but in that time they were able to learn much about the quadrant, making friends as well as enemies nearly everywhere they went, having a significant impact on many of the species they encountered. Their journey began when the Federation starship Voyager and the Maquis ship Valjean were pulled into the Delta Quadrant by the Caretaker, a member of the highly advanced Nacine species, who long ago poisoned the planet of the more primitive Ocampa, and so moved them underground, where they provided everything necessary for survival. After the Nacine left this region of space, 2 caretakers were left to watch over the Ocampa, but they were parted when the female resettled a group in another part of the quadrant. The male stayed behind to watch over the homeworld, but eventually learned he was dying, and so started gathering beings from across the galaxy to find a genetically compatible partner so that their offspring could take over his responsibilities with the Ocampa when he was gone. Unfortunately, he died soon after meeting the Voyager crew, leaving Captain Janeway to destroy the array that brought them into the Delta Quadrant, rather than using it to return home, as this would have allowed the technology to fall into the hands of the Kazon, former slaves who rebelled against their trade masters, by developing a ruthless warrior culture that now dominated the region. Eventually, Voyager encountered the female Caretaker as well, but the encounter proved hostile, as she wanted vengeance for the death of her mate, believing the crew was responsible. Looking at a 70-year journey back to the Federation, the Maquis joined the Voyager crew alongside 2 Delta Quadrant natives in the Talaxian Neelix and the Ocampa Kess. Talaxians once had a thriving, spacefaring civilization based on the world Talax, but were now reduced to a scattered and oppressed people after losing a war with the Hakonian Order. Neelix and Kess were quickly welcomed by the crew, most of whom were scared to be so far from home, but understood the need to destroy the Caretaker's array. Yet some few believed it folly, with Seska, a Cardassian spy, and the Maquis Michael Jonas defecting to the Kazon, who were desperate to attack Voyager and steal their technology, which was far more advanced than what they possessed. Though Voyager attempted meeting with the various Kazon clans to make peace, their violent, male-dominated society meant they did not respect Captain Janeway or Federation values, making negotiation near impossible. Yet thanks to the heroics of the crew, Voyager survived the Kazon and eventually left their space, meeting many more fascinating species throughout their journey, such as the Vidian Citadel, a people who once had a great and prosperous civilization, until a terrible disease called the phage ravaged their society, attacking their body tissue and cellular structure. Under threat of extinction, the Vidians poured all their efforts into developing highly advanced medical technology and harvesting organs from other species to replace those being destroyed by the phage. Though Voyager fought back against Vidian attacks, several of the crew were taken captive and some were harvested for their organs. Fortunately, by 2375, the phage was cured by a think tank who traveled throughout the Delta Quadrant, solving problems in exchange for unique treasures. Controlling a large region near Kazon space, the mysterious species known by some as the Swarm were infamous for their reclusive and hostile nature, with most ships who encountered them never heard from again. Their nickname came from the swarm of small ships they sent to attack vessels in their space, with the Voyager crew barely able to escape. When the crew came to the aid of the Nezu, they learned of the Itanian Order, a people who conquered other worlds by manufacturing natural disasters, which cleared out the native population, allowing them to settle the planet once uninhabited. While traveling through a part of space controlled by the Bomar sovereignty, an isolationist power, Voyager was given a strict flight plan which they violated, resulting in their expulsion from the region, told to stay at least 5 light-years away from the border. There were also the Krenim Imperium, a great power in the region who developed time travel technology, which led one of their ships to create a number of alternate realities, where they eventually fought a war against the Voyager crew, leading Captain Janeway to sacrifice herself and her ship to destroy the source of the temporal disturbance, thereby restoring the original timeline. During this same period, Voyager met the Zal Union, a friendly species who defeated the Krenim in a war, and so were wiped from existence during one of the alternate timelines created, as were the Alsurians, who once controlled a vast empire near the Krenim border. The Hirogen proved to be another threat against Voyager, as they were a large and powerful hunter society who viewed other species as prey. A migratory people, they roamed a vast portion of the Delta Quadrant, hunting whoever they wanted and taking trophies they displayed proudly. During one of their hostile encounters with Voyager, they were given holographic technology in the hopes of stopping them from hunting living beings. But the Hirogen wanted the most challenging prey possible, and so programmed their victims to be supremely intelligent, creating a sentient race of holograms who rebelled against them. The Malon Cooperative were technologically advanced, but lacked the ability to recycle antimatter, creating a profitable industry which transported hazardous waste and dumped it into open space far from their home planet. The Devor Imperium were an authoritarian government who sent telepaths to detention centers and inspected all ships traveling in their space. Since Voyager had to pass through their borders, they developed a way to conceal the telepaths on board, as well as a number of Brinari refugees, a species persecuted by the Devor for their mental abilities. Finding the last of the Vaduar species asleep in stasis pods, the Voyager crew helped revive their people, learning that they were a great power centuries earlier, who used subspace corridors to expand and conquer their enemies. When those enemies, led by the Turay, then rebelled and destroyed their civilization, the remaining Vaduar went into stasis, hoping to one day restore their society. But the Vaduar learned nothing from their ancient defeat, and once again resorted to aggressive conquest, trying and failing to seize the Voyager ship and take it for their own. After a hostile encounter with the Overlookers and their government, the Hierarchy, Voyager learned their species possessed advanced surveillance technology, which they used to spy on passing ships in order to assess whether they should be raided. In addition to some of the more influential species of the Delta Quadrant, Voyager encountered a great number of lesser powers, like the Benia, an amiable and technologically advanced species with a unique approach to crime and punishment, implanting memory engrams into the guilty, which forced them to repeatedly relive the victim's last moments alive. The Benia were at war with the Numiri, a secretive and hostile species who evolved on the same homeworld. There were also the Teresians, a people whose population was 90% female, leading them to release a retrovirus upon males of other species, which altered their DNA. Those males were then wed to 3 Teresian females, and killed after mating, in order to extract genetic material for reproduction. The Monian maritime sovereignty lived in the waters of an ocean world, but the planet was under threat from local industry, as their oxygen refineries were causing the artificial core to lose containment. Norcadians invented Sunkatsi, a martial arts competition viewed by many species across the Delta Quadrant, while Oksani, Chesu, Imhotep, and Turellians were at war for years until 2377, when they made peace and held the Antarian Transstellar Rally with racers from every species. Though the event was bombed by rogue Turellians, Voyager helped preserve the peace. And the Denali, who hired Jai administrators to oversee the distribution of resources on their planet, with the government ordering them to prioritize healthcare so that the rich and elite were given the best treatment, while many of the poor were left to suffer and die. Throughout their successful journey across the Delta Quadrant, Voyager not only recorded their contact with other species, but also their exploration of stellar phenomenon, such as a planet once populated by a pre-warp civilization that was wiped out by an explosion of polaric energy. This event was so devastating it created subspace fractures, which were inadvertently used by Captain Janeway to travel into the past, where she learned it was the crew's attempt to rescue her which caused the explosion, and so found a way to stop it from occurring and save the planet. When Voyager found a wormhole leading to the Alpha Quadrant, they began to hope it might take them home, but they soon learned that it was a temporal micro-wormhole, which led 20 years into the past and was too small for their ship. Though they could not use it to travel, the crew sent messages for Starfleet and their families through a Romulan contacted on the other side, but he unfortunately died before they could be relayed. Continuing on, Voyager had to pass through the Necrid Expanse, a region stretching across thousands of light years, but was extremely difficult to chart due to constant plasma storms, electrodynamic turbulence, electrokinetic storms, and other dangers which threatened navigational readings. Passing through the Expanse, Voyager went on to find a species who suffered a disaster after experimenting with omega particles, a highly unstable substance so powerful one molecule had the energy of a warp core, while a chain of them could power an entire civilization. In the 23rd century, a Starfleet physicist synthesized a molecule which remained stable for a fraction of a second before it exploded, killing 127 scientists and creating a subspace rupture over several light years, which made it impossible to maintain a stable warp field. The Borg Collective, cybernetic beings native to the Delta Quadrant, who reproduced by assimilating other species, were also familiar with Omega, believing it to be the pinnacle of perfection, and lost 29 vessels as well as 600,000 drones in their own experiments to create a single molecule, which lasted 1/1,000,000th of a nanosecond before it destabilized. Though both the species they encountered and the Borg believed Omega should be harnessed, the captain was duty-bound to destroy it because of a standing order from Starfleet to eliminate it wherever encountered. While traveling through a largely empty part of space, which stretched across 200 light-years, Voyager suffered power failures, but were rescued by a Malon freighter, who led them to a spatial vortex which could transfer them to the other side of the region. Though the crew named this place the Void, that was also the name of a spatial anomaly encountered years later, when Voyager was struck by a massive graviton force, transporting them into a pocket of space roughly 9 light-years in circumference, with no gases, stars, or stellar phenomenon, separated from the rest of the galaxy by an inert layer of subspace. The only way in or out of this void was through one of the funnels which periodically erupted, bringing in new ships from normal space. With most believing there was no way to escape, many turned to piracy, surviving by attacking other ships and taking their supplies. However, Voyager took a cooperative approach, forging an alliance with other vessels and pooling resources, eventually finding a way to use the opening of a funnel to get them out. Among the many lifeforms they encountered, one of the most interesting was a protoplasmic beast living in open space, which devoured ships by incapacitating their crews with telepathic illusions. When a male named Katai lost his family to the beast, he dedicated the rest of his life to hunting it, but was eventually tricked by an illusion and swallowed. Yet once within, he found the starship Voyager, which was recently consumed, and worked with the crew member 7 of 9 to get the beast to expel both ships. Once free, Katai again flew towards the beast, continuing the hunt. During their time trapped in chaotic space, Voyager discovered it was a region that intersected the normal space-time continuum at the 18th dimensional gradient, and as a result, the laws of physics were in a state of flux, making navigation near impossible. Fortunately, a species native to chaotic space contacted Voyager and helped them escape. Though the Federation crew made a great impact on many during their time in the Delta Quadrant, their most significant effect on a single species may have been when they found a planet displaced in time, which made 58 rotations per minute, meaning the native population experienced roughly 1 day for every second in normal space. Unfortunately, Voyager was pulled into its orbit by a gravimetric gradient, resulting in severe seismic activity on the planet. The people could also see the ship in their sky, and it became a central part of their culture, with some even worshipping it as a god. In the short amount of time Voyager was present, the population went from Stone Age tribes to an advanced, spacefaring civilization, which at last allowed them to visit Voyager and help them leave orbit. In addition to the new species and stellar phenomenon encountered, the Voyager crew found a number of connections to the Alpha and Beta Quadrants, like a colony of humans whose ancestors were abducted from Earth in 1937 by the Briori to be used as slave labor, until they rebelled and took the planet for themselves. There was also the advanced species known as the Sky Spirits, who began visiting Earth roughly 45,000 years earlier, inspiring an ancient tribe to migrate south and populate the Americas. During a mission to Rakosa 5, Voyager was forced to disarm a dreadnought missile threatening to destroy an innocent world, as the weapon had its origins in the Alpha Quadrant, reprogrammed by the Maquis to use as a superweapon against the Cardassians. While investigating a strange power reading among the Bronze Age civilization of the Takarians, Voyager found 2 Ferengi from the Alpha Quadrant ruling over the planet. While attempting to escape from the USS Enterprise, the Ferengi traveled through the Barzan wormhole and became trapped in the Delta Quadrant, where they found their way to the planet of Takar, inhabited by a pre-industrial civilization with a prophecy that stated two great sages would appear on wings of fire to lead them. Using this story to their advantage, the Ferengi posed as these mythical figures and convinced the population by using transporter technology to perform miracles. Once in charge, they created a financial empire by exploiting their followers, and transformed Takarian society by extolling the virtues of greed, materialism, and the rules of acquisition. A highly advanced reptilian species who lived aboard an enormous city ship, the Voth had a history dating back millions of years, when they originated on Earth, evolving from the Hadrosaur to develop a spacefaring civilization which left the planet and settled in the Delta Quadrant. Yet while some Voth scientists understood and accepted the genetic evidence presented by their examination of humans, the government denied and censored their work in favor of upholding their mythological beliefs that they were the first intelligent species to evolve in the region and therefore were its rightful rulers. To the surprise of many, the Voyager crew soon discovered another Starfleet ship in the Delta Quadrant called the USS Equinox, a short-range research vessel transported from Federation space by the caretaker in much the same way as the others. Nowhere near as large, powerful, or well-armed as Voyager, the Equinox suffered many losses as they made their way home, losing half their people to the Cretonan Guard for violating their space. By 2375, the Equinox was down to a skeleton crew who largely abandoned the principles of the Federation, instead doing whatever was necessary to survive. In their desperation to make it home, they found a way to summon nucleogenic life forms from an extra-dimensional realm in order to kill them and use their bodies as fuel to enhance their warp core, allowing them to travel 10,000 light-years in just 2 weeks. However, the alien lifeforms fought back and started killing crew members, leading them to send out a distress call, answered by Voyager. Though the reunion of Federation officers was joyous at first, Janeway soon learned the truth of what they were doing, and the crews turned against each other, resulting in the destruction of the Equinox and the death of its captain and first officer, while the survivors were stripped of rank and accepted into Voyager. 2 years later, in 2377, they found a Klingon generational ship populated with the descendants of a small sect who long ago left the Beta Quadrant on a journey to find the prophesied Kuvamach, a savior they believed would lead them to a new homeland. When they encountered Voyager in the Delta Quadrant and learned that their chief engineer B'Elanna Torres was a pregnant half-Klingon, the captain destroyed his own ship so they could stay aboard the Federation vessel and await the birth of their savior. The Klingon captain later revealed he was not really sure if the child was the Kuvamach, but felt their journey had to end, and with the help of Voyager, they settled a new world. Having a significant impact on many while serving aboard Voyager, B'Elanna also spent time on a pre-industrial world, where her presence inspired a writer to create a series of plays about the Starfleet crew, which encouraged their local ruler to avoid war and make peace with his enemies. Coming across a ruined planet with only a small population of survivors living underground, Voyager was shocked to learn that the Earth space probe, Friendship 1, launched in 2067, ended up crash landing on this world. The pre-warp civilization native to the planet had no knowledge of such technology, but were able to reverse engineer it and start experimenting with antimatter, leading to a terrible disaster which destroyed them. Having become famous throughout the Delta Quadrant, a group of con artists began impersonating the Voyager crew in order to forge fake alliances and extract resources from unsuspecting victims. When these criminals robbed the Telsians, a group known to be honest and trusting, they attacked the real Voyager in retaliation, leading the crew to learn about and arrest the imposters. Although the information collected by Janeway and her crew became the Federation's primary source of knowledge on the Delta Quadrant, one of their many discoveries was that they were not the first humans in the region, or even the first Federation ship. In 2354, the USS Raven followed a Borg ship into the Delta Quadrant, trying to study their behavior, and while the family on board was eventually assimilated, the daughter, Annika Hansen, was later liberated from the Borg and became the Voyager crew member 7 of 9. Though they survived hostile encounters, the greatest threat in the Delta Quadrant was without a doubt the Borg Collective, who held a vast region of space and used transwarp technology to travel to other parts of the galaxy. Fortunately, Voyager had more opportunities to study them than anyone else in Starfleet, and so were able to find ways of upgrading their weapons and shields to deal with this threat. For a brief time, they even allied with the Collective in order to defeat an even greater threat posed by the Undyne, also known as Species 8472, who were native to fluidic space, another dimension which was invaded by the Borg, only for them to be quickly overpowered and chased back into the Delta Quadrant. Though their hostility with the Borg remained after the war ended, the Undyne later made peace with Voyager and established diplomatic relations. Although at the time Voyager believed the Undyne to be the larger threat, some saw them as heroes because they were taking on the hated Borg. Among these people were Species 116, which were all wiped out but for one survivor, who went on a mission of vengeance against Voyager, blaming them for helping the Collective win the war, which in turn allowed them to continue assimilating innocent worlds. The Borg also wiped out the Katati, leaving them with only 27 ships, which turned to begging and piracy in order to survive. The Bernali people were so traumatized by years of relentless attacks, they started using their own children as living bombs, altering their genes so that when they were assimilated, they would spread a virus that killed all the Borg in the area. In the end, it was Borg technology and their transwarp hub, which allowed Voyager to make it home, and they even managed to launch a final attack as they passed through, crippling the Collective's ability to communicate with each other and travel great distances. Although Neelix remained in the Delta Quadrant to serve as a Federation ambassador, it would be many years before any ship would have a chance to explore this quadrant again, though the being Q once stated that humans would arrive by the 25th century. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Ishmam Ahmed of Shamiriana, the Winter Sorceress, Madam Faith of House Scarisbrick, Sir Dayron of House Ashford, and Christ Walder the Crimson Shadow. If you'd like to help CivilizationEx, click on the Patreon link, and please be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to see more.